Good morning, Anne Arundel County. Good morning, America. Welcome to Promoting Community, Conversation, and Discovery. I'm your host, Anthony Bynum. The name of our production company is the Glen Burnie Players. These are exciting times here in Anne Arundel County. It's getting a little warmer every day. Things are starting to grow. I see some budding on the trees. I see the grass turning a little greener. So that's exciting. That's very exciting. So let's start off today's show with upcoming events. It's never too early to talk about Ferndale Day. Now, the third Saturday in May is the 18th this year. Okay. We had a great day last year. We had beautiful weather. The whole community came out. Our business people supported the event. We had the local organizations were there. I even saw a dinosaur. I think they call him a turtle, but he looked like a dinosaur to me. Hopefully, we'll get the same kind of cooperation there. Uh, so it's exciting times here. They just are. They just are. Now, March 22nd, that's today. Is everyone lying around doing nothing? You might want to head down to Annapolis for the running festival. It starts at the Navy Stadium. You got 5K, you got 10K, right? You're not doing anything? I say go out and run 10Ks. Why not? Runners, whether you run in a group, run by yourself, the discipline to run is probably harder than any other because it's just you pushing your body. That's all. Just you pushing your body. I jogged about a mile this morning because I haven't been able to run a mile for a long time. Right now, we're working on episode 18, Community Conversation and Discovery. And we'll talk a little bit about that at the end of this episode, at the end of the show. Affiliates, these are the fine folks who run our shows for us. So let's start off right here in Anne Arundel County with AAC TV. Thank you for airing our shows. Greenbelt Cable Access in PG County, thank you for airing our shows. Amherst Media in Amherst, Massachusetts, thank you for airing our shows. Manhattan Neighborhood Network in the Big Apple, Bite, thank you for airing our shows. Brunswick TV in Brunswick, Maine, thank you for airing our shows. I talked to the producer recently. He said we've getting a couple people who are watching. So it's always good to have feedback, right? Always good to have feedback. References. So we have to give sites for where our information comes from. So we want to thank the fine people of Wikipedia and Google Images. Thank you so much. And of course, our underwriter/sponsor, that is the Cleaning Chef. More information is available for them, about them and their services in the credits. Most admired. Once again, like, why did it take so long? There's so many great choices. And what a good problem to have. What a good problem to have. So let's go to our share. Where is it? Right here. And there it is right there. This week, we want to talk about no one other than the great Bob Barker. Come on down. What a great show. I learned some neat things in my research about the great Bob Barker. So let's start from the beginning. So Bob was born 12/12/1923. He left us 8/26/2023. He was 99 years old. He just was short of making 100 years. He was born in a place called Darrington, Washington. He died in Los Angeles, California. Bob had an incredible life, an incredible career. But you're never going to guess where it all started. See, he spent much of his youth on the Rosebud Indian Reservation in South Dakota. This was the Sioux Nation. In fact, he was a citizen. His father was 1/4 Sioux, and that made Bob 1/8 Sioux. His mother was a teacher. She taught on the reservation. So this Bob Barker, this guy was a natural. He attended Drury College in Springfield, Missouri on a basketball scholarship. He was 6'1", he's a tall guy. He was a member of Sigma Nu fraternity. So I think if you ever watch the show, he has such personality with all women, that I think we know where that started. He joined the Navy Reserve in 1943 to train as a fighter pilot. That's right in the middle of World War II. Okay. So, like all the men of his generation, he knew what the right thing to do was. Now, it turned out he never saw combat, but he guess apparently he knew how to fly planes. He met his wife at an Ella Fitzgerald concert in high school. You know, let me tell you something. When you watch Bob Barker, all those years, back to the 70s, this guy was a natural. You know, there were a lot of black folks. There were a lot of black folks who were on The Price is Right. I never saw anything forced with him. He was just a natural guy. He cared about people. It was came out in his personality. Um, no, he earned a bachelor's degree in economics. He graduated summa cum laude at Drury. So he was a smart guy. He studied economics. He wasn't a broadcaster, he studied economics. But you know, this guy was a born broadcaster. In fact, his first media job was at KTTS FM radio. This was, I believe, in Florida. It might have been, I think actually it was Missouri, actually. But he moved to California and he found work immediately. So this guy was good. He just impressed people. Matter of fact, he got his own show, The Bob Barker Show. And it ran for 6 years out of Burbank, California. He made a name for himself and people were paying attention. So back in those, he was, you know how the radio business is. You know, when you trying to pitch a product, you pitch a product, and he must have been smooth in his delivery because the TV people came calling. Matter of fact, there was a show that was already on. It was called Truth or Consequences, and he was brought in to replace Jack Bailey. I think I'm not exactly sure what happened with Jack, but he was brought in to replace Jack Bailey. And the show ran his part in the show. It was already an established show from 1956 to 1975. So he's on the show for a long time. In fact, in 1972, upstart producers Mark Goodman and Bill Todman, we know them, Goodson Todman, came looking to wanted to modernize The Price is Right. So The Price is Right had been around. They wanted to modernize it, and they came looking for him. Now he initially turned them down, okay, but it worked out. It was just in fate, and he took the job. And his run was from 72 to 2007. This guy was a natural, man. This guy was just a natural. Bob Barker. He's one of the greats. He's one of the greats. Now, Bob had a message. He loved animals, and he had a message that he started putting into the show. He said, "Help control the animal population by fixing your dog or cat," because he recognized that he loved animals, but he also knew that we were the stewards for the animals, dogs, cats, and we wanted to make sure that they had good lives. So he spread that message out. He spread that message out. And it was a very moderate message. It was a very moderate message. Hey, you have a dog, cat, you want to make sure we control that population. So, yeah, Bob Barker, for so many reasons, I most admired. The guy was a natural. And I will say this too. I don't remember. I have to look at some old episodes, but I think Bob kind of frowned on the $1 bidding. You know what I mean? I mean, not $1 only, but if somebody bid 2000 and the last guy said, well, 2001, I think Bob kind of frowned on that. I think Drew Carey's like, whatever. I got the show now. But it's just not fair. It's just not right. It's a great show, great format. Yes, Bob Barker. Okay, so let's move on. So something of consequence regarding Anne Arundel County. So we're going to switch forward. I don't think we've covered this particular town yet. This is the town of Millersville. It's not that far away from where I'm at, not that far away from the Glen Burnie area. History of Millersville. So Millersville actually goes back to the 1600s. The land was inhabited by the native people, most likely the Piscataway Indians. The soil was rich, though. Natural resources were abundant. It was a great place to be. Because if you're coming to a new place, what's your first thought? You need something to drink. You gotta be able to drink water. What's your second thought? You gotta be able to grow food. Millersville offered all that. Now, as settlement occurred and time moved on, tobacco became the dominant cash crop. Okay. Plantations were worked by enslaved Africans, and because that's how things were done before emancipation. We forget that while cotton was our biggest cash crop, it allowed us to get international credit in international markets. tobacco was the second because you can grow tomatoes, but they're only good for a couple of days. You know, you can grow lettuce, but it's only good for so long. You're not selling that stuff to the Europeans. It would never survive the boat rides. It would just be infested with bugs. But tobacco kept for a long time. Cotton, obviously, a lot longer. Now, the Severna River loomed large. It allowed for commerce. The first post office was built in 1840. Oh, now something's happening, right? The railroad day came in the 1880s. Remember, I've talked about this before. So many of these towns outside of Baltimore, outside of Washington, it was the railhead, the rail line that made them because you have to have movement, right? You have to be able to get places. You have to be able to bring in the cattle that's traded. You have to be able to bring in supplies, bring the mail to the post office because you need communications. So these are the fundamental ways of running an economy. You have to have transportation. You have to have communications. All of that's important. Millersville is a perfect example. Now, it would be many years later before the suburbs occurred. In fact, people wanted to move outside of Baltimore City, outside of Washington, D.C. You had to have a place to go. Millersville is unincorporated, and in the 2015 census, which is for some reason the last one on record here that I found, the population was about 20,000 people. It's a nice little town. I'm there all the I'm at least passing through. You know, they have lots of schools there, and your typical, strip malls and the like, parks. It's a nice place. It's a nice place, folks. Okay, so before we move on, I normally like to end the show with a speech or a poem, but something that's in theme with what's happened today. But we're going to go take a little different track. We're going to talk about the history of game shows, but also more importantly, or for the sake of this, payola. You see, game shows have always been a staple of television, right? People get excited about a chance to win something. I was told my mother was on a game show many, many, many years ago. She told me about this. And it was some local show out in California. My father was deployed. My mom was at home with the kids trying to make a way for her girlfriends, got her on some show out in California, and she won like I think it was a washing machine, which she needed badly. And she told me about that. I said, man, I would love to find that video. Of course, it's long since destroyed, I'm sure. But here we go. So there were lots of game shows. Producers in this payola scheme, producers secretly gave assistance to certain contestants in order to get pre-arranged outcomes. This was called payola. One of the guys who got in trouble, I think he did time for this, was Alan Freed. You know, Alan Freed was a DJ who gave the name rock and roll to all the music that was coming down the pike in the mid 50s. So when guys like Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry were doing their thing and other groups with and then doo-wop groups, they needed a name for it. And he came up with it. And I think he was out of Cleveland. And yeah, he was a very important guy, because they needed a name. I think before in the 30s and 40s, I think they called them race records. That's not selling anybody. That's not selling anybody. No advertiser's gonna put their name next to that. But rock and roll and all these new upstarts, and you can still bring in these doo-wop groups that were so instrumental in rock and roll. But we're not here to talk about Alan role in that. We're here to talk a little bit about payola, right? So the public was shocked when these stories first broke. Their trust was shattered. That happens a lot. But their trust was shattered. Congress had to act. It was a big deal. In fact, what they did was they amended the Communications Act of 1934 to create stiff penalties. Somewhere in there, it probably meant bringing in auditors along with jail time, right? So, yeah, I think, when you see the wheel going around, and Price is Right, it's not fair. I mean, rather, it's as fair as it can be. It's as random as it can be, because you could have 50 cents You think you're going to get another 50 and you end up getting 55 and it's over. Well, folks, we're going to stop the share. So as far as the show's going, right? So I said we have one in post-production right now. I think it's episode 18, Community Conversation and Discovery. We're excited about that one. But right around the corner, starting hopefully very, very soon, we want to start in post-production on the Adventures of Auerbach. And that's going to be a big one. That's going to be a big one. So today we're going to be going over some scripting. So for everyone here at the Glen Burnie Players, again, my name is Anthony Bynum. Until next time, bye-bye.